So there's some new fallout today in the IRS scandal. Lois Lerner's attorney and House Oversight Committee Chairman Darrell Issa squaring off over the weekend over these thousands of missing emails. Her lawyer challenging claims that Lerner lied about a computer crash. Chairman Issa not buying it.
Her attorney has said things and been not correct or disingenuous or outright lied a number of times, and it's been shown by emails. Look, attorney trying to get his client off the hook after flubbing the taking of the Fifth certainly will say and do a lot of things, but they're not held accountable. Ultimately, what we know is the archivist said that the IRS failed to do what they were supposed to do in informing, failed to properly keep documents.
Steve Hayes is senior writer for the Weekly Standard and a Fox News contributor. Good morning, Steve. Good to have you here.
Morning, Martha.
Let's also hear from the lawyer. Her lawyer is William Taylor III, and he was on CNN over the weekend. And here's what he said about his client.
There was no pretense that this would be a fair process. From the beginning, the Republican majority has screamed without any evidence about things that she did and made it clear that the only purpose of having her there would be to vilify her.
So there he was answering the question about why she took the Fifth in the first place, but littered in his entire statement are things that it's easy to raise some questions about, Steve.
Yeah, no question. I mean, look, he's her lawyer. His job is to defend her and to make her look good, usually in court or before Congress, but in this case in the court of public opinion. It's very clear that Lois Lerner has done many things that cause questions about her behavior and about her willingness to tell the truth, most especially, I think, right at the very beginning when she planted a question in the audience that got this entire thing started. But these are the kind of things you would expect to hear from her lawyer, who has had these clashes with Darrell Issa going back now months over her testimony, whether she would plead the Fifth, whether she would appear, etc.
You know, the lawyer tries to portray her as someone who was very concerned about the fact that her emails were missing. And they went so far, he says, as to, call the IT guys in and say, gee, we can't find this. Doesn't sound like they went a whole lot further than that to try to reclaim them. And if that were the case, then why wouldn't she take the opportunity when she was before Congress to say, look, this is my side of the story. This is not my fault. The computer crashed, and frankly, I didn't know that I was supposed to hold on to them under the law, which is a stretch, but that's what she could have said.
Right. Well, I think her actions belie her words, at least as he portrays them. I mean, she seems to have been so concerned in his telling, and yet they didn't do much, and eventually the hard drives were discarded. I mean, it's a very different thing. If you think that your hard drive, if this information is recoverable and you want to keep this information, there are a number of steps that you can do to do that. And it appears that she did very few, other than perhaps, again, in his telling, alert the IT guys, and he says, call a second IT expert. I mean, of all of the things that you can do, if you really want to retrieve this information, calling a second IT expert would seem to be sort of perfunctory.
Low on the list. It also seems to me that there's no acknowledgement on the lawyer's part or on Lois Lerner's part, because we haven't heard from her, that they are public, that she's a public employee, and that there are rules for public employees that you must print out your emails, you have to make sure you keep them. It almost sounds like, they feel like they're working for a private company.
Right, exactly. I mean, his job, I think, on the show was to portray her as a victim, but he didn't take into account at all the fact that the lead archivist of the United States said, in effect, yeah, the law was broken here, records were not kept, which should have been kept. Again, this is something you'd expect the lawyer to say on behalf of his client, but he continues to make the argument that this is a partisan witch hunt, that these are Republicans treating his client unfairly, and yet he hasn't called for a special prosecutor. I mean, if somebody thought that this was an impartial investigation, why not call in a third party? And if his client is truly innocent, as he's said repeatedly, she would then be exonerated in such an effort.
That's a great point. He should be the one, or among those, calling for a special prosecutor if he believes that she was wronged in that way. Steve, we'll see. So far, nowhere with the Department of Justice on this, and a lot of yelling and not a whole lot of action. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time,
Martha.
Steve. Okay.